All right, everyone. So today we're going to try our hand at our first sort of Novak style lecture in the absence of body movement or performance. And I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work here. Um, this digital learning piece is something that I'm adjusting to just like you. So I'm going to do my best to kind of explain these ideas in the same way I would. But obviously, it's a fraction of what could have been. That said, today I want to go through the short answer question. I very much envision this style of written response being what you're going to see on the AP exam in its modified form in the next couple weeks. They're going to tell us on April 3rd exactly what's going to happen. So we can kind of wait on it. But right now, I don't think we're in a position to kind of just tread water for a week. So I want to go forward on this thinking that this is probably what we're going to end up seeing. So here goes nothing. You're going to follow along on your worksheets, answer questions as you go through, and sort of mind this presentation for answers. Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about here is on the short answer question format, we are going to use an acronym that a lot of teachers across the country use. Miss Yondo used it up until a couple years ago. It's called ACE. And ACE essentially is going to cue us to do for every question the three critical steps that will result in your earning points, which is exactly obviously what we're after. So we're going to ace the SAQ. Now, what does ace mean? First off, the A in it is quite simply, you are always going to answer the question. I've been saying this to you since the very beginning of the year. You always answer the damn question, right? Not the first cousin of the question, not what you wish it was asking. You are answering exactly what is asked. And the easiest way of making sure we do that is to go back to what your third grade English teacher told you to do, in that you always answer the question by restating the question in that first sentence. So if I ask you to assess social and political effects, you're going to respond to that question by saying the social and political effects are, and then you answer it. So step one is to answer the question, and that is obviously the A. Step two, and the C of ACE, is to, after you have kind of summarized your answer to the question in your first sentence, you're going to cite specific factual evidence that you have that supports your answer in that first line. So if I said social and political effects, I would say, for example, foot binding ended up becoming a practice of the Song and Tang dynasties that cemented patriarchy, and foot binding would be an evidence piece. So we cite evidence. Now, we should probably cite more than one pieces of evidence if they're asking for more than one. If they're only asking for one answer, then you just could include one piece of evidence. But generally, we want to layer in multiple, especially if we know multiple. And then for the third sentence of our ACE and the third letter in ACE, you are going to, in the first sentence, answer the question by restating it. In the second slash third slash fourth, but the middle part of your answer, you're going to cite as much evidence as you can to support your answer. But that last step is where a lot of students kind of fall flat, and they will ACK an answer to a question instead of ACE it. You need to, for the E, explain exactly how each piece of evidence that you discussed supports your answer. So if I said foot binding as an example of social effects, I would, in the third part in my E, say foot binding shows social impact by, and then I'd finish that out. I need to be very explicit in how the pieces of evidence that I chose to use actually support my argument. I can't just assume that the reader is following, where my mind is going. I need to make it really, really clear for them. And so we're going to call this acronym ACE. Ms. Yando doesn't use this acronym anymore, but she basically teaches it when she teaches the short constructed response, or the SCRs, that are basically English versions of the SAQ. Now, this slide right here is questionably relevant given the changes coming down the pipeline with the abbreviated AP exam, but I wanted to show you this. In normal years, you would have been asked to do 4 short answer questions. And I show you this not because you're going to need to do 4 in a 45-minute timeline. My guess is at worst you'll be doing 2, although again, we don't quite know yet. But I do think I want to show you this because you can see the various types of questions that they do. So I think you're going to see a variety of different short answer questions on that 45-minute exam. And my guess is that they're going to be pulled from this style. So let's take a look at each one. In a normal year, you had 4 short answer questions. The first question was always going to force you to kind of deal with a secondary source, where you are basically stating a historian's argument and then thinking of examples throughout history that would have supported their argument. It's possible we could see this on the end of the year AP exam, where they would give you a secondary source like a subset, or like a section of Strayer, and then ask you to summarize the historian's argument that's being made, and then from your knowledge think of multiple examples throughout history that Strayer could have used to cement the argument. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that style of short answer question. The second question would be asking you to use specifically some of the historical thinking skills that we've worked throughout the year, although not in a full-blown essay format. I don't think we'll have time for that. But we did comparative essays, we did continuity and change over time essays, we've talked about causation, and this second question in the short answer is going to force you to use that style of thinking even as you ace your response instead of writing a full-blown 5-paragraph essay. I think that's definitely still a possibility. Can you correctly use comparison style thinking, or CCOT style thinking, or causation style of thinking in order to answer a question? It is definitely a possibility. And then the third or fourth question, because you got to pick on this one, would again ask you to deal with historical thinking skills. So my best guess at this point is that you will see short answer questions that are going to be based around a stimulus, either a primary source and a secondary source. And I would be shocked if they didn't then require you to then assess these primary or secondary sources using those historical thinking skills that are the hallmark of our course. And those historical thinking skills are, again, comparison style thinking, continuity and change over time style thinking, or causation style of thinking. And you can see, this was in a normal year what that would look like. Thankfully, as I said earlier, the College Board has narrowed the scope of our exam to not include anything after 1900. And obviously, even though we started the beginning of the year at the beginning of human history, our exam is only going to start at 1200. So we are thankfully, again, a little bit narrower. I'm not exactly sure the format that you will be writing with for the short answer questions on the modified new AP exam this year. But in the past, they would give you a piece of paper that looked like this, and you would have to write your entire essay in that box. That's obviously not going to be possible on a digital test only that can be taken on a smartphone. But I think it's possible that you might have to write your response on a piece of lined notebook paper, and then you could take a picture of it and upload it. I'm not sure exactly how the College Board's going to kind of get around the digital divide that exists in our country. But I'm guessing they're going to have to figure out something, because although you guys are really fast, if I had to text an entire SAQ, it would be horrible for me, and I would be very slow at it, and it wouldn't be good. Some of you would be probably better at it, but again, we're going to see. I think the big things from this piece here that I'm going to push here is that in a short answer question, you're always going to get three parts to the question, typically in a question A, a question B, and a question C. They're all going to deal with the same area, but they're going to be separate. So typically, like question A might be uh, uh, assess the author's argument that he is making here in this primary source. Section B might say to think of two incidents in history that would support the argument being made in your answer to A. And then section C might say think of two more incidents throughout history that would lie counter to the argument being made in A. I think that that's probably a realistic possibility that we will continue to see. And my big push here for you is in a short answer question, you're not writing a 5-paragraph essay. You're essentially writing an answer to A, an answer to B, and an answer to C. And in order to be nice to your readers, who will not be sitting in Salt Lake City this year because it's been canceled as a result of coronavirus, but will be instead reading and grading your essays or short answers from their living room, they will be happier and it'll be nicer to them if you separate each of your answers by a line. So you write A dot and then answer question A, and then you skip a line and write your answer to B, and then you skip a line and you write your answer to C, and you label each of these. You cannot bullet point things. If anything is bullet point or not in complete sentences, they won't count it. It has to be a kind of a paragraph response, which is why we do ACE. And so for a visual of what that would look like, you can see here, the student in this example labeled their answer to question A, they're labeled their answer to question B, and labeled their answer to question C. And you can see they followed the standard ACE formula pretty much to a T. In the first question, take a look at it. You can see A, their answer was the spread of contagious European-born diseases significantly decimated Native American populations. That would have been them restating the question, right? What was the effect of European diseases, or give me an environmental effect coming from the Columbian Exchange? And their answer was clearly stated in that green underline for part A. And then if you can see, they cited evidence to support that when they said natives did not possess the natural immunities to diseases such as smallpox and influenza, and almost 90% of their populations perished. That's specific evidence for how European diseases decimated Native American populations, and so they would get credit for that evidence. And then you can see in the blue underlined section to question A that they are explaining exactly how that evidence supports their answer. So they would say Native population losses weakened their defenses, and European conquerors easily subjugated survivors and exploited their lands through colonization, as a way of explaining how their evidence decimated Native American populations, which was their answer in the green underlined above. So we're going to follow this formula pretty much to a T, and I would suggest potentially you bring up this visual example again when I give you tomorrow your first SAQ to do. Reopen this PowerPoint, take a look at it to remind yourself, maybe put it in a different slide and go on. I've already said we've looked at the types of questions, so I'm going to kind of move on. But basically what I want you to do now here is in your packet that you can pull up in Google Classroom, you are going to answer, right, a question, and you're going to follow this step. You're going to look at the stimulus. You're going to assess the author, the title, the date, the region, all the stuff I've taught you to do all year to give you a better idea of what you're about to read and to kind of frame your argument. You read the questions, you take notes in the margins, and then you reference the stimulus, you ace it. Here's the two questions I would like you to do in your packet. You can see space for them is included. You're using a stimulus that I provided, Jared Diamond, and I will see you again tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.